the interview began really well. It was very friendly environment where you could easily express yourself. And so, of course, some of the first questions were basic introductions. Who are you? What do you do? What motivates you? Why do you think you're a good candidate? Some of the other questions that I was asked was things to do with, what do you know about Italian culture? What do you know about the language? Have you started to speak the language? And I think after answering this question, because I answered it with like a short Italian word, I could see that the mood lightened up. So I thought that was something that also worked in my favor, because it's like, can you speak Italian? I say, si, buongiorno. They're like, you can. So, yeah, they asked me a little bit about Italian language, about Italian foods and places. And then they also asked me about what I did for my bachelor's degree final thesis or final project. And so I had to explain, at the time I was working on a solar energy project for one of our labs in our university. So they asked me actually in quite a bit of detail to explain exactly what I was doing and what was the goal of the project, and how I would use the knowledge and the skills I gained to benefit my country, to benefit where I'm coming from, and what were my plans. So what were my plans after I graduated? Was I going to stay in Italy? Was I going to go back? And so these were the kinds of questions that they asked. And I think that, in my opinion, whenever you're asked these kinds of questions, it's very important to be very specific. So, mention precise things that you think that you can do with those skills. Like, what ideas do you have for yourself? Like, you can't just say something generic like, yeah, when I finish, I'm going to go home and develop my country, or I'm going to go home and work to benefit people's lives. You can give something that is a bit more specific, like, maybe I'm thinking to open up a startup that's going to focus on this and this kinds of systems, and this is the kind of value I want to provide to the community. And in this way, I think that you give to the interviewers a good idea of who you are as a person, what motivates you, what's your personality, and it gives more authenticity, let's say, originality to your work and to your words. And so this was how the interview went, and yeah, this is, I think, the main questions that I was asked.
So actually, after you've been contacted and shortlisted, now here comes now where you have to really pass this last final step, and you start thinking, oh my goodness, which type of questions can they ask me? How am I going to answer? How am I going to do it? So some of the few questions that I was asked during my personal interview was to introduce myself. Of course, that is like the basic one. So introducing yourself, if you're not keen, that is where you catch the attention. The moment you start talking and you cannot even introduce yourself properly to entice someone or to get on the right track, then that is where you lose the person. So I introduced myself, my name, where I am from, and I was just so brief to the point and what I was doing at that moment. And yes, that was it. So after the introduction, they asked me which course I was going to do, and what were my aspirations with that course, and why I had chosen the specific university. So at that time, I was working as an intern. My course was about food and all that, but I was working in a hospital as a clinical nutritionist. So I noted my experience and what I was doing at the moment, and then related it to the course that I had applied. I was very straight to the point. I did not beat around the bush and trying to entice them, because they always know. So after them asking me about my course and all that, they asked me why I was choosing University of Parma. So you have to research also the university you're choosing, and at least get a background research on why you're choosing it and why you want the specific course in that area. So in my case, I had researched about the University of Parma, and Parma as a place, what it offers. and it's like one of the best places in Italy, which offers like food courses and all that. And also like the European body that regulates food safety, which is like the EFSA, is located in Parma. So it puts Parma on the top of European universities in Europe, like the European nations, because it has their headquarters. So when I mentioned that, they were like, "This is really, she knows what she's doing." So I was like, I could really like hear. I think they were like three people who were like interviewing. So they were like, okay, she knows what she's talking about. So I told them about EFSA and like the Parma cheese and how I'm really interested in knowing how cheese is produced and all that. And they were like, wow, she even knows about the Parma cheese, like the Parmigiana and all that. So after that, things were really just moving so smoothly. They asked me what I have done previously. Actually, they didn't even like ask about my education. So I assumed they had known my grades and all that. So they didn't even ask me about what did you score in your degree and all that. No. They just asked me how my degree was related to my master's, the master's program. So I had to relate because both of them were food courses and all that, and also the work I was currently doing in a hospital was still a clinical nutritionist. So I related the two, and they were like, okay, she's going to like to specialize, so she's doing good. And then another thing which I can remember they asked me was if I had like someone who was previously a MAECI scholar, and of course you have to tell them like it's a no because they cannot like sponsor two people in the same house for sure. That would be, I think, selfish because they cannot do like just doing the same people in the same house. And they also asked me if I know anyone in Italy at the moment. And I was like, no, I don't know anyone. So if they had to try to help me like find someone, which they tried, but they didn't have like any students at the moment who are in Parma. So I think those are the questions which they asked me, and just explaining myself and having a clear overview of what I was going to do and relating them. And that was it.
They asked me questions about like tell me about yourself, you know, and then prior to that, I'd listened to a lot of interview questions where they were like, if somebody says tell me about yourself, it's not basically like tell them your name, your family, and all that. They want you to talk about like your potentials, what like has made you Jeff Tauche and not your family. So I talked about that, and then like okay, then they asked me about my family, um, like how I've been able to cope with my studies. If I'm seeking for a scholarship, then definitely I might have had challenges with my, finances in studies. And I was like, yeah, I told them about my family and all that. They asked also the program I studied for my BSc, and then I told them, and also they asked me the program that I was intending to go and study for the masters, and I said it, and they're like, how does the program I studied for my BSc and then the masters like coincide? Because I did agribusiness for my BSc and then agriculture, and then I'm going to do markets and international markets. So they were like, what is the correlation? I was like, agribusiness basically, it has marketing and all that. So it's basically the same thing, but then with an agric, flesh on it. So it's basically the same thing. And then they asked me um my some of my experiences, and some background information about myself, how I've been able to pull through life, in terms of my academics and all that, because they were like they looked at my grades and they were pretty good. So how did I come about? And I just told them, and yeah, basically that. And um they were like, okay, very happy with the interview and how I answered the questions. So probably if should I get the scholarship, then fine, but if I don't get it, they have some scholarships in my school that I can apply to, and then do the masters in Ghana instead of going to Italy if I don't get it. Well, okay, fine, anything that has things happen. So